Hello cave dwellers, welcome to the Swindon Museum of Computing. We're back again following our last visit when we looked at the Amstrad CPC range, and as you can see we don't just make videos and disappear, we've made a whole display here for visitors to come and enjoy, and rather unnervingly on the TV over here is that very video of us. It's a bit discombobulating, isn't it, when you come in and you see yourself on a massive screen. I'm Neil, by the way, if you're new to the channel, hello, and I'm joined today by Keith from the Digital Orphanage. Keith, you're a volunteer here, aren't you?
I am, yes. I volunteer behind the scenes. I like looking after the machines and having a look at what's coming in, and on when days when they're closed, give the place a good clean, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just keeping everything shipshape. And there was a specific machine that you spotted needed some maintenance, didn't you? And called me up to come and make a video on it, which we're covering today. What was that? It's
the Nintendo Playchoice-10. It's an arcade machine we've got here, and I came in one day and there was a out of order sign on it. So I asked what had gone wrong, and the manager said that he'd smelt something really bad and saw a bit of whiff of smoke, so unplugged it quick, and that's how I found it.
And it's a shame for it to be out of order because it's the only arcade machine that's on display here, so it would be a really nice contribution, I think, to get it working. So that's why we've come in to contribute our time. It's going to take about a full day of our time, I think, to get this working today. And we're going to tell you an awful lot more about the Playchoice-10. Some of you probably have heard of it, have seen it, know about it, but we're going to open it up and show you how it works. But first, time is of the essence. I think we need to get stuck into repairing it, and then we'll come back and tell you about it a bit more later. So let's get stuck in, Keith. The Nintendo Playchoice-10, or more specifically, our Nintendo Playchoice-10, is a sick and very dirty example, as you'll see the closer and closer we look at it. It's certainly a novel machine with two screens, one at the top and one at the bottom, and it's quickly apparent that one of them is a little under the weather. The top screen is the game or channel selection screen, and it looks like it's been possessed by the ghosts of arcade gamers past. Despite its problems, the machine is still operational, though. If we hit channel select to bring up a game on the main screen, it's then perfectly playable, even if that main screen is very difficult to see, especially around the outer edges, but we'll come to that problem a little bit later. First, we'll focus our efforts then on the top screen. And of course, this arcade, just like any other one, is designed for maintenance. It's made to be popped open and serviced easily so that it can quickly get back to its primary duty of making the owner lots and lots of lovely cash. Now, if you're thinking of attempting this yourself, then here is the obligatory disclaimer. Neither Keith nor I are qualified to impart electrical safety information to you, and arcade monitors have the potential to hold a very large and even deadly charge. Please do your homework on safely discharging them first, and do as we say, not necessarily as we do. Before we pulled the top monitor out, an initial inspection did raise my not insubstantial eyebrows, as well as Keith's carefully groomed ones. A large capacitor seems to be bulging, so our first impressions were that this could be a good place to start. And then, did you spot it? Let's see that again, Keith, with a slow motion action replay. It's very difficult to see on the video here, but there is magic smoke coming from somewhere inside here. I'll run that by you a few more times so maybe you can see it. And let's also go for an NCIS style zoom and enhance. Can you see it now? It's still very difficult, but it's definitely there. So before doing anything further, we went with the old screwdriver connected to the chassis discharge method, slipping it under the anode cap to safely discharge it without any dramatic cracks or snaps on this occasion. Caution is still advised at this point though, because yes, the screen can act as an almighty capacitor and shock you, but there's also some large capacitors on the board itself, so once again, do be careful. Which I think I've said enough now, so if you stick your hand in places you shouldn't after this point, well, I did tell you so. Now let's get the top monitor out. This is a Hanterex MTC 9000 open frame monitor. Hanterex, a very well-known producer of arcade monitors, and a name that sadly I don't see often enough these days in the kit that I work on. And it, like everything else in here, is absolutely filthy, so we'll be cleaning it as we go with compressed air and anti-static brushes. The open frame monitor comprises of the screen, the main board, and a small adjustment board to tweak the picture, and the main board lives on a tray for very easy removal. Once that tray is clear of the monitor, the first thing we did was to inspect the bulging capacitor, and after a quick wipe of the capacitor, our initial confidence that it was the cause of the problems was dampened a little because it wasn't bulging at all. That's just a plastic cover on top of the capacitor. That would have just been too easy, wouldn't it? We took a moment, however, to make sure it was discharged, which it was, and then we set about cleaning and inspecting the board to see what else might be causing problems here. So while we're doing that, let's take a moment to consider exactly just what the Playchoice-10 machine is, how it works, and what its place in the arcades was. So Keith, I think we've got to the bottom of the problem and we're going to tackle that now. While that's going on, what do you know about the Playchoice-10 arcade cabinet?
Well, Neil, it has a choice of 10 games inside, and that came from a whole range of 52 that Nintendo released between 86 and 91. And this format of putting a home console in a cab was then later copied by Sega and SNK with the Neo Geo.
Yeah, so there was always this drive to try and bring down the cost of arcade cabinet ownership because it's all about profit, isn't it? It's all about keeping the players interested and keeping their money coming in. So if you could find a way to make the games interchangeable, in this case 10 games to choose from, then you could hold that player's interest. But I have to say personally, I don't know if you remember or have any experience of it in the arcade, I would avoid this thing like the plague, because why would I go to an arcade and play on a Nintendo NES? There were far better games in the arcade to be played. But saying that now, I think it's a really good way of playing NES games. It's a really nice way to play them.
And in the day, I guess, when a Nintendo game cost about, £40 or so, it was probably a good way of quickly play testing a few.
Yeah, almost treat it like a demo. But let's not talk about it. We say there's an NES, or it's NES based. Are there 10 Nintendo NESs in there? Let's open it up and let's see what's inside. From a player's perspective, it differs to a standard NES in that it's timer based. You pay for time on these games, which are selected from the top monitor here, where each game is a channel, and we press these buttons to cycle through them. So the games are modified slightly compared to regular NES releases to accommodate this timer feature. Once you've chosen a game, the top monitor can also display hints and tips on the game you're playing. But what is it that we've actually got inside the cabinet, Keith?
The whole system board slides out of the front of the cabinet here, on which you'll find all the same components you'll find in a standard NES, but you'll also find a Z80 CPU display information like hints and tips on the top screen, and of course the games which you can see in the slots on the right here.
And in those slots I can see we've got Super Mario 3, Ninja Gaiden, which one is it, Keith?
I'm going to say Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden, Double Dragon, Dr. Mario, Gauntlet, and a whole lot more, well 10 in fact, installed in this cabinet. And along the top of the slots are the channel numbers. If we pop one out, Super Mario 3 in this case, you can see that on the game are 4 socketed ROMs, and that's really not dissimilar to the regular NES cartridge. Those 4 black blobs on the cartridge here are each a ROM in which the program is stored, but the Playchoice-10 cartridge has an additional 8K ROM on it in which to store those hints and tips that appear on the top screen. Do you think anyone took their eyes off the main screen to actually read those hints and tips?
I know I do.
Of course you do, Keith.
And all that's really left to see inside the cabinet is the power supply at the bottom of the tray and the blue harness which connects the board out to the displays, the control panel, coin mechanism and speakers.
And that's pretty much everything that's inside there. So I don't know about you, but I really want to see this cabinet working. So let's get back to our repair. So welcome back to our repairs and a much cleaner board now. And I think under all of that dirt, we may have found the source of the magic smoke. Resistor 6 here is looking particularly scorched, so we'll get that swapped out. And that's not to say it's the root cause of our problem, however, because more often than not a resistor doing this is the result of a problem elsewhere and is a symptom rather than the cause of the fault. Resistors are pretty reliable, so we won't stop inspecting the board just yet. Was our big 200 watt capacitor bulging underneath that plastic hat? No, it wasn't. But we swapped it out anyway simply because we had a new one in the toolbox, and keeping your caps good on these monitors really does help the picture. If your picture is washed out or just not quite right, it's normally time for a recap to freshen up the image, so a new one went in, but we were under no illusion that this was our root cause. And then something far more interesting came into view. This gaping hole in the board is where the leg of a film capacitor in location C37 pokes through. And, well, it should be soldered. This joint has totally failed, so we're going to reflow that. C37 is of particular interest because it's one of the capacitors that controls the horizontal width of the picture. And we saw the picture collapsing in on itself horizontally. So that's got to be more than a coincidence, right? And with that in mind, Keith and I were much more confident that we'd found the culprit and the root cause of the problem. Now, the last thing we wanted to do was put the board back into a filthy cabinet, so we took it upon ourselves to give it all a really good clean-up. This thing is absolutely filthy. I have no idea when or even if it's ever been cleaned. And with the monitor removed, it gives us the opportunity to look at a fun part of the machine, the coin mechanism. How is that fun, Neil, I hear you say? Well, allow me to show you. Ordinarily, you'd find the coin mech at the bottom of the arcade right next to the coin box, but here, it's all the way at the top. Inside the machine, you can see the mechanism drops our coins through and into these tubes to slide all the way down neatly into the coin collection box, which is at its usual place around the front and at the bottom of the machine. And inside, these partitions nicely sort your coins for you, ready to pull out and take back to the cash room or wherever you take your coins. Or in this case, a spanner, which is stowed away in there. See? I told you it was fun. But that's quite enough fun for one episode. Let's get the monitor back in and see if our repair has worked. And just look at that. When we power it on now, we've got a nice solid image, and with a little adjustment around the back, we can bring out the colour and sharpen up the focus, and then we've got a nice, solid, colourful, sharp image. And we did give this a good test to make sure the problems didn't return once it got all warmed up, and it has, I'm happy to say, been a successful repair. But our work here was just getting started, because our lovely clear top monitor is now complemented by a rather dull and hard to see lower monitor, and this isn't a problem of electronics, people. This is year upon year of pure, unadulterated filth. And Keith and I cannot stand by and let this be inflicted on the good visitors and the Swindon Museum of Computing. And so, everything got a wipe down and a clean, and I mean every single corner of this machine. And while we're here, why not install a missing marquee light and a bulb for the coin mechanism? If you thought I was exaggerating when I said this was filthy, just look at this. Now you know why we have gloves on. The more you clean, the more dirt you see, and that's exactly where our day took us, from scrubbing the monitor clean to removing and cleaning the control panel to within an inch of its life. The control panel was in pretty good condition actually. It had a loose button, but thankfully the rear nut for that button was caught up in the original cabling, which is lovely and tidy, so I could tighten that back up. And all of our micro switches are in good working order, so no repairs needed here. What can I say? With reliability like this, they must be genuine Sanwa parts. So I rolled my sleeves up and got scrubbing, and before long our old friend and regular on the channel made an appearance, Finger Juice. I really hope you're not watching this on your lunch break. The cleaning continued from the glass panel on the top monitor all the way through to the little illuminated marquee that sits in the large moulded front fascia, which also holds the coin mechanism and a couple of speakers. And after all of that and a lot more cleaning besides that hasn't made the edit here, we can put it all back together to show you the difference and discuss just what the options might be to do next with this machine. So there is our restored, I don't know if restored's the right word, repaired and cleaned up cabinet. I hope you can see the difference because I'm certainly really pleased with how it's come along. It's been a hard day's work, but are you happy with the result?
I'm happy with it. I'm not sure you're completely happy.
I'm happy. As I say, it was a repair and not a restoration. Now, if this was mine personally, I would be looking to take some next steps to actually now go on to restore the machine and perform a little bit more preventative maintenance, which I know you have got in mind to plan ahead. We just couldn't fit it all in one day. And there are some things that you did that didn't make it into the edit just because there was so much to do. So what are some of the other little fixes that you did today?
I discovered that the power cable in the back was sort of spliced together and too short, so that wasn't as it originally should have been. So that's now been replaced. It's got all the proper crimp connectors. And the other thing was there's a fan in the back to keep it cooler, and that wasn't connected. I connected it up, made a racket, so that needs a bit of work, and I've also got a replacement on order as well. So so yeah, basically make it safer, make it last longer.
Yeah. And if I could choose to do one thing next, it would be to simply do a full recap of both monitors, because those monitors, like all monitors in arcade machines, it's recommended that you recap them just to keep the picture nice and vibrant and bright and looking good. Thankfully, there's not really any burning on that screen, just a tiny amount, but it's not noticeable when you're playing on it. That's what I would do next. But the big differing of opinion that I think we have is when it comes down to the control panel. When you look at the control panel here, I personally would go out and buy new vinyls to stick on there and make it look like new. Keith?
Yes, so I think when it's in a museum setting, it's all about originality. So yes, it's had a life, and then you could say patina, but both myself and the curator here believe it's better to keep it original where possible.
Ultimately, it's their choice, it's their arcade cabinet, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Would you restore the control panel? Would you leave it as it is? What are your thoughts? I do like the fact that it's got some character, it's got some patina, as you say.
It's had a life.
It's difficult, it's a hard decision, but I just love to restore things back to as close to the original as possible. That's just my personal preference. And you've also done some work on the kick plate, or the foot support down at the bottom there, haven't you?
Yes, over the years you can see where people's feet have worn away and it's peeled away some of the rubber. So we had a choice, replace the whole rubber, or we'd noticed on a few online that people had put a metal strip along. Yeah. So as it's going to probably rub away in the future, if we just replace the rubber, let's make it a bit more harder wearing.
It's so expensive to find that kind of rubber in that small amount of quantity. You had to spend a fortune to buy a huge roll. Fine if you're maintaining a whole arcade, but for this one cabinet, I think that's a good fix. It does the job and it looks good. So I hope you've enjoyed the restoration today. We'll leave you with some more glamour shots of the cabinet in action. And just like we've done with the Amstrad display here, we're going to put that somewhere nice. We're going to give it some information around maybe some Nintendo NES consoles and games to support it and tell the story a little bit. So get yourselves down to the Swindon Museum of Computing, come and have a look at it and enjoy that and all of the other displays that they've got here. And of course, come and enjoy Keith. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care and goodbye.
Goodbye.
If you enjoy my content and would like to support The Cave while receiving a completely ad-free experience and access to releases 1 week before they go public, then visit patreon.com/retromancave and join the official Cave Dwellers. Thank you for your support.